Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog, Arichcomiclife. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes over 750 comedians and counting, watching them over the last 45 years. My guest today is the fantastic Mr. Jake Lambert. Yes! Hello!
Hello.
How are you? Good to see you. Are you all right?
I'm very good, thank you. Good to see you too.
Oh, it's great. I'm so delighted you're here. It's
my pleasure
to have you here, mate. It really is. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes to an hour or so talking about your comedy career, if that's okay.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
So,
yeah.
We're going to go right back to the start. And can you tell me, please, how did you become a comedian?
Well, how did I become a comedian? I'll tell you, I guess, how it happened was I was on Twitter. I had a Twitter account, still do, and I was tweeting jokes on there. And then a couple of comedians started messaging me and asking to buy my jokes off of me.
Right.
So I sold a couple. I didn't know that was a thing, but I thought I might as well make some money. And then I thought, I might as well just go and do these myself and just get the money from the promoter rather than from a comedian.
Brilliant, yeah.
So I just booked one in London. At the time, I was also making my own short films because I did film when I was at university.
Right.
So I was like writing, then I was directing those and editing. And I was like, it takes so long to do. But I thought if you go on stage, I can just write my own jokes. I could direct myself and I can just edit as I go. And I realised I was just making, I was just sort of performing then. It was a lot easier and quicker. Yeah. So I just booked some nights in London. It was Rachel Paris helped me get my first gig.
Right.
Because she followed me on Twitter. And then I was off. That was it.
What year was that?
2013.
Wow. Right.
That was like, as in, that was my first open mic. So, we just in a pub in London. But then I still had a job and stuff.
Was that sort of like 5 or 10 minutes with your mate and you would stand up from a crowd and do your 10 minutes and then sit back down again? Is that how you started?
Yeah. So it was the first one was in the Cavendish, it was called the Comedy Virgins. And have you been there?
I've been there. Yeah.
So it's the little theatre space at the back of the pub. And then, but it's so lovely, and you have to bring a friend. I think so. Every comedian has to bring a friend into the audience.
Yeah.
But the problem is, for some reason, the only thing that's wrong with that gig is they don't have a lineup. So they'll say the next act is, and they pull out a number, and it's I don't know if that's supposed to help people be relaxed. It does the complete opposite.
You don't know when you're on.
Yeah. And so you always think you might be next. But what happened was, I had a friend of mine who was from Germany. She was living in England, and she'd had a problem with her landlord, and he had told her that she can't stay there anymore. So she was on the phone asking if I could help her. So what happened was, she was, in another country, and this landlord, who was awful, said that she couldn't live there anymore. So she was basically homeless in another country. And I thought, well, her experience tonight is a lot scarier than mine is. So it put it all in perspective. And I was like, I'm literally just going to tell some one-liners in front of a nice middle-class audience. So actually, what have I got to worry about?
I wish I'd been there.
It was good fun. I really enjoyed it. What happened was, I was quite nervous, and in fact, the comedian Saskia Preston was there.
Right.
I think she was on, so I think she must have already started. But she said she remembers that she didn't know who I was, because nobody knew who I was because I'd never done a gig before. But my I think I must have forgotten to take a belt, so my trousers started to fall down.
Oh no!
I was so nervous that I didn't do anything about it. So she said my trousers, not a lot, just started to slowly. I didn't do anything about it. I was too nervous to sort of get out of my flow. Yeah, but maybe that's why they were laughing. Either way, it worked.
I haven't been on stage many times, but one of the first times I ever went on stage, I played. It was at primary school, and I played Dopey the Dwarf. in Snow and the Seven Dwarfs, and I had to go on my knees because I've always been tall, and I had shoes on my knees, so I walked on, and of course Dopey always used to get battered about by Snow White because he was the big one, and I thought, I don't know whether I can do this. All I'm trying to do is get laughs.
I didn't realise that was Dopey's role. That seems a bit, it's aged badly. I can't imagine that being happening anymore. Being beaten because he's not very smart.
Well, yeah, he was like thick, and it was, anyway, that was years and years ago. Anyway, so you've described your first gig, which was 5 minutes in the Cavendish Arms. Is that right?
Yes, that was the first one. Yeah. I say that. I think it was 3.5 minutes, right. And I looked down at my watch, realised it was only 3.5 minutes, and pretended I hadn't started my watch, so that I didn't know how long I had done. So I left.
Brilliant. And did that go? That obviously went reasonably well for you to consider carrying on, yeah.
What happened was that night. This is going to sound like a very egotistical story, but what happened was people kept going up because it's Comedy Virgin. So it's a lot of people's first gig. Yeah. So I went up, and people kept saying, "Oh, it's my first gig," before they started, and then get a round of applause. So I went on stage and I said, "This is my first gig." And then everyone clapped, and I said, "Oh, thanks, that always gets an applause." So I sort of had joked about it being my first gig. So then the promoter, comparer, he came on, and as I was leaving, and he shook my hands, and he said, "Was that really your first gig?" And I said, "Yeah." And he went, "Bloody hell!" And so I was like, "Oh, that was actually what's." Let me know that it must have been all right.
Oh, brilliant! That's brilliant. So, yeah, you obviously progressed from 5 minutes to longer sets. Other comedians say they do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then 20s, and then the full hour. What do you like to talk about on stage?
It's actually changing, and I think it's changed during lockdown, because I used to sort of talk about just my life and not really touch on politics, just because I thought it'd be a bit refreshing.
Yeah.
But that a lot of, especially when you go to Edinburgh, a lot of comedians are talking about sort of big topics.
Yeah.
But if I could talk about, smaller stuff like making the perfect cup of tea, or about my cat.
That's what I love.
Yeah, it would be a bit sort of refreshing. But I've realised that actually, I think that in my head, but I'm very reliant on the audience to notice that, because a lot of them might think there's bigger things going on here, and you're talking about a cup of tea. So what I've decided to do is, and because there is bigger things, is I've started to try and talk about bigger things, but make them smaller. So comparing them to more personal things, or talking about the fact that we can't talk about these big things because we're comedians, and it's too big, and and the world isn't as black and white as people make out, who's good, who's bad. So I'm actually trying to talk about that on stage, which I think is what I'll do a lot more.
Good lad. That's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and then ultimately, once I've got that out the way, then talk about the things I want to talk about. Because I think, all the things I like to talk about, they're both things I want to talk about. But then the more sort of homely stuff is maybe a bit nicer, a bit more personable.
Yeah,
but then the other stuff I feel like I need to say.
That's what I find watching you. You are very personable with an audience, and that's a great gift to have. You have that anyway. You're very, very good at interacting with an audience, and that's a massive plus. Nice.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very nice of you. I do enjoy that, actually. It is good fun. It makes it seem live.
Yeah.
More live. Mm.
Yeah, very, very much so. Tell me about your writing process. When you are writing a show or have got an idea, how do you practice? How do you rehearse it? How does the idea come about?
The idea can come from anything. It can be something that maybe somebody notices in me. A friend might make a comment or might joke about something I do, or I might see something when I'm out for a walk, or I might see a scene in a film or something, and then I make a note on my phone.
Right.
And then what happens is me and George Lewis, comedian, we send each other 5 jokes. There you go. He does always be comedy as well.
Yeah.
And we send each other 5 jokes every Monday morning. So I send him my 5, he sends me his, and then we give each other notes and send them back. So what it means is, maybe on a Monday morning, I'll sit down, I'll go through all the notes I've made that week and pick out my top 5, and then I will make them into maybe a bit more jokes. There might have been observations that I need a punchline or something, and I'll send them to him, and then I'll know that everything I've written that week, that is my best 5, and then they all go into a file, so that when I've got a new material and I scroll through and I find the ones I like, pick up my favourites. So it's always sort of getting filtered down before it gets to stage. With what I like, and maybe with George has given it an extra tag or a better punchline or something, and then so they've been a bit filtered before they get to stage.
What's brilliant as well is that you're using another comedian's experience to work out to help with your writing process. That's great.
Yeah, we're almost both like learning at twice the speed, because he's out doing his gigs, I'm out doing mine, and there's things that we've learned, or there's rhythms that we've learned that we can put together. So it is helpful. It's really good. And yes, and some of my best jokes I think have come from sort of workshopping them with George. So yeah, it's really good. It really helps.
The reason why I know George so well, my brother is called Nick Gill, and he makes adverts for the TV. And I first saw George Lewis at Always Be Comedy with James Gill, obviously comparing. And I'd never met him before, and I said, "Oh, whatever it is, you've got it. You're great, really good." And I went, "Oh, thank you very much." And then my brother rang me up and he said, you've been speaking to George. I said, "How do you know him?" I said, "I work with him."
Oh, wow. Oh, no way.
I couldn't believe it. So the next time he appeared, I told him this story, and he went, "I genuinely thought James Gill was your brother."
Oh, really?
And I went, "James Gill's my comedy brother."
Yeah.
My real brother.
That's so lovely.
I'm hoping he's going to do this. I know he's become a dad and everything, but I hope he's going to do this.
He's got 2 children now.
He has, yeah.
We've got 2 very different lives.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So we'll move on. You reached a number of major comic semi-final competitions in 2015. I'm thinking the Leicester Mercury Comedian of the Year, the BBC New Comedian, and the Magners New Comedian. And you also reached the Amused Moose final in 2016. Describe these experiences of entering and getting so far in competitions, because it's thoroughly deserved.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Right, yes, the BBC one I did super early, so I'd only been going a couple of months, and I didn't realise that I was up against people who'd been going for a few years. So what happened was I got to a bit which was the public vote, but because I'd been tweeting for so long before it got to this point, I had a couple of thousand followers on Twitter. So when I said, "Oh, can people vote for me?" some big people, including Adam Kay, the now author, started retweeting. So what happened was, and I didn't know how comedy worked. I didn't realise how maybe bitchy it could be. So clearly at the time, I sort of knocked out, you could say, some big people who'd been going for years. But I didn't realise that that I guess maybe I haven't broken it. What was it? It was just a vote, but it was a flaw in the BBC's system, maybe, that they shouldn't be doing it to a public vote. But so what happened was, I remember a few years later, the competition happened again, and someone else got through who had a bit of a Twitter following. And I saw a few people tweet and say, "Oh, I see the person with the most Twitter followers got through again." And I suddenly realised how I must have, so people must have been sort of moaning about me. And then, so funnily enough, then the Leicester one, the Leicester Mercury, I got to the final. Well, it's only ever a final. So you get, I think it's 12 people get nominated by promoters and people. And in fact, it was Adam Kay's boyfriend, who was a producer at the BBC, who put me forward for it. So he nominated me. So he was somebody who was asked to nominate somebody. So, two things. One, very lovely. I got to go on the radio. You get to get some nice reviews. But ultimately, competitions are, I think, are really silly in comedy, because there would be like, say, for example, 12 of us competing, but we're some people are going home and some people are going through, but not necessarily the best. And it's not like if we were all like doing a 100-meter sprint, we would know that was the fastest person, that was the slowest person, the fastest person goes through. And it just depends on who's judging that night, or who's, and then you've got, I think the BBC one has some critics who are judges, but I don't think that critics should be sort of gatekeepers to be voting people through. And it's all a bit strange. So they're good to do because they can give people a level up, and it does help, and it does help people know who you are. But ultimately, I think they're a bit, maybe a bit silly. But it's up until the top, which is the Edinburgh Fringe. It's just there in the comedy world, so it's something I'm going to have to live with. But I just find it a bit. I thought once, which I think is mad. You can win the World Cup as many times as you can. You can win the Oscars as many times as you can. You could. But for some reason, I was going to say the Nobel Peace Prize, but I don't know how many times you can win that. Maybe once, maybe I don't know. But the Edinburgh Award, you can only win it once. So, like Jordan Brooks, for example, he's been going to the Fringe and had like an amazing time at the festivals. Now he's won. What's his sort of drive to go back, and what's the audience's drive to go and see him, because they're not going to see the so. I think that's a bit flawed as well.
Yeah, very much so. I agree. The reason why I wrote my blog, I went to the Amused Moose half-day writing competition. It wasn't a competition; it was just to improve on my writing, and
like a workshop.
Yeah, workshop thing. And I said to them, I'm not a reviewer, I'm not a critique, I'm not a diarist, I'm a member of the audience, and I'm out to have a good time. And so my blog is really an enthuse for the brave heroes to me who get up there and actually have a go and do it. It's extraordinary.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. Because I'm going out every time I go out to the comedy. I'm going to myself, right, I'm going to go and enjoy myself, and I do, and that's all there is to it. So with everybody else, if you get hecklers in or anybody, and we're not there to hear them, we're there to hear you. It's as simple as that. Okay, Jake, what's been your best and worst gig?
Okay, I'll start with the worst one, because I imagine that's the one people want to hear more about anyway. If I'd say the best one first, people won't even be listening. They'll be like, can't wait, I'm going to go and put the kettle on. I want to hear about the worst one. So the worst one was it was a corporate gig I've blanked out, I think it was Guernsey or something, and it was for I think it was like their construction awards. And it was just a horror show where I'd asked who the other comedians that had done it the previous years were, and it was Milton Jones and Lucy Porter. And I was like, lovely comedians. I imagine that means it's going to be a lovely audience. And I got there, they flew me in, and then they said, you won't be on till 10:30 tonight, so go to the hotel, make yourself comfortable, we'll pick you up. So I get there, and then it's like, everyone's obviously really drunk, and I'm on after a guy who's retiring is being like honoured for his all his work. His wife's turned up as a surprise, but I tried to have a conversation with her and she was giving nothing. It was all a bit odd, and she sort of went on stage, and I think they must have had an argument before the evening, because it almost seemed like she didn't want to be there and he didn't want her to be there. It was very odd. And anyway, afterwards, the host of the night said, and that's everything, give it up for everybody, have a good night and everything. And then I was like, what do I do? And then a lady ran in, it was like, just go on here. And I was like, I don't have a microphone. And she was like, oh, I'll get you a microphone. She got me a microphone. She goes, here. I said, so do I just announce myself on? But at this point, people were like walking past us. They were like leaving. So she was like, oh, welcome. She was like, grab the mic. She was like, welcome to the stage, Jake Lambert. And then I sort of walked on the stage, and then I sort of had to walk through the people. So they were all coming at me. I'm like, and then I got onto stage and people are leaving, and they sort of turn to look to sort of say, do we have to stay? And I'm like, you can go if you want. So they do. But then there's this table here of men in their mid to late 60s, and they're all in tuxedos, and they're instantly heckling, and they're saying, you know, where's your suit? And I was told not to wear a suit. So I'm like, and they just hated me. So luckily, this side of the room, to the centre and the right, and there's the girl, actually, there was a girl in the middle, and we now follow each other on Instagram. She was so lovely. She was like laughing away. And then there was all the people here who were really lovely. They're all young and they were loving it. And then there was just these men here, and they just hated me, hated it. So the more that sort of they hated what I was talking about, the more this lot loved it. So I was trying to wind them up more, which I shouldn't have done. And then I did this whole thing about tea. But I used to do things like the color of the lids, and how what one was like, you know, red skimmed is like white water. But over there, the colouring's different, and they have cartons with the same colours, but the colours don't match. So I think red is semi-skimmed, green is skimmed, and blue or green is, it's wrong basically. So one of them, I got so confused by it, but the more I got confused, the more that wound them up. So then one of them said here, and he showed me his phone like this, and he googled all the different milks. But I had two big screens behind me so everyone could see. So I was like, right. So I was talking them through the milks, and then he said, right, now you finish that bit, you can F off. And I said, that's a very brave thing to say to somebody who has your phone unlocked. So I said, maybe I should go into your photos. And I pressed photos, and I turned it like that. And then we're scrolling through, and it was all harmless. And then it was a woman on like a bed. But she was dressed, but like for like a room dressed. Oh my. And then I said, oh, who's that? And it was on a big screen. And then this other woman from another table said, not his wife. And she got up and stormed out. He walked after her, and I just sort of handed him my phone. He sort of snatched it out, and he walked off. And I looked down, and they said, do anywhere between 20 and 25 minutes. And I looked down, and it was 19 minutes 59. And I just went, I've been Jake Lambert. Thank you very much. Shouldn't have told them my name.
Brilliant.
And then,
that's horrible,
and then
but brilliant.
I left, and this young guy who was helping out at the event, he came rushing in, and he sort of said, this way to the car. And then I said, oh, wow, you got the car all ready for me. And he said, yeah, I came and started up about 5 minచి after you'd been on. He obviously realised this needs to be a quick escape. And the next day, honestly, I had to fly home, and it was baseball cap on, space in the airport, just thinking. And it wasn't until I got off the plane that I was thinking I'm safe, because I just didn't know if someone was going to walk past me and recognise me. Wow. And oh god,
oh mate, that must have been,
yeah.
But a great story.
It's the only time, and it's the only time in my life, I think, where I felt that I needed a whiskey. Right. I got back to the hotel, and I needed like a drink. And
what about follow that? What about your best ones then? There must be too many. Luckily, there's lots more of those to choose from. My best one was I'd say maybe without a doubt, like it was in Norway, opening for Michael McIntyre. Wow. And it was in Oslo Arena. Wow. So it's 10,000 people. Yeah. But but they're not like a lot of arenas you play. They go back and around. But this was like just a wall of people. Wow. And it was incredible. And the building itself, it was an ex-UN building.
So like to get backstage, well, when you play arenas, you're in the big car, and you drive in to the building.
Yeah.
And then because it's bomb proof, so like there was a big door about this thick that you had to turn like the wheel on it just to get it to open on its wheels. And it was just absolutely incredible. And a friend of mine lived in Oslo, so I messaged her and asked if she wanted tickets.
Yeah.
So she came along, and I was just looking. There was like a hole in a bit of the curtain as I was looking out at all the people that were going to be on, and I could see her. And I was just getting ready to be called on, so I had my phone and I just texted her. I said, "Are you wearing a red jumper?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "I can see you." And it was incredible. In like a sea of 10,000 Norwegians, I could just see her.
Wave.
And it was, yeah. And it was so lovely. Then afterwards, because I thought when you play these places, I just thought that I'd never played arenas before. I'd never toured with Michael. Yeah. So I thought that they just had all the food you could want. So this guy kept coming up to me before I'd go on stage. I'd be like, "What would you want for dinner afterwards?" And I'd be like, "Oh, what do you have?" And he'd say, "Anything." I'd be like, "Wow." And so this one, he was like, I said, "Oh," he said, "Got everything, is it Italian or Chinese?" I said, "Oh, perfect, I'll have Chinese." And I ordered my favorite Chinese meal. And he said, "I'll have it ready for when you get off stage." I was like, "This is incredible." So on stage, it was amazing, and it was huge, and I loved it. Yeah. And then I went to get this afterwards, and I walked off stage into my green room, and the Chinese was sat there, and I was like, "They do everything at this place." And then he said, "No." He said, "I go and get it for you." And we'd done 4 nights there, and I thought that this guy had just been going to the venue to get food, but he'd been driving. As soon as I went on stage, he drove out into like wherever we were. They were like Trondheim or Lillehammer or Oslo to get dinner for me and have it ready for when I came off stage. I had no idea, and it was my favourite meal after my favourite gig. Yeah, it was lovely.
Wow. And what a main act! I mean, I saw McIntyre in a tiny hut before he was famous, and you could tell.
Really? Where was that?
That was in Edinburgh. One of his very early Edinburgh shows.
Right.
And there was about 50 people in there, and you could just tell he's such a great comedian. He can pick anything and make it. He did a brilliant routine about getting his hair cut. It was just fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, he's anything, so and it's good. Once he's touched it, you feel like you can't go near that topic because he'll just have had it, and he's like that off stage. He's so fun to be around. And there's a great video on my Instagram actually, because we got snowed in on the last night, and so we were like wait, because we were flying out, so we had like this private jet lined up, but it couldn't take off. They put us in this little building, and as we walked out, I was filming it because the snow was everywhere, and Michael picked up a snowball, and our tour manager was sort of walking ahead, so he threw it, and you just saw this snowball just hit the tour manager on their head.
Oh, brilliant.
It was absolutely perfect. And it was so good, and Michael just turns around to the camera and goes, "Did you get that?" I was like, "Yeah."
I bet he is. I've always wanted to meet him. I couldn't get near him. I've seen him many times, but
he's lovely. He really is.
Yeah. You talked earlier on about getting nervous. You were early, certainly at your early gigs, you were nervous. Do you get nervous before you go on stage generally? And if you do, how do you cope with it?
No, I don't really. I think it was actually probably the lesson I learned on that first gig, where my friend was left almost homeless in a foreign country, that I just think, what's the worst? I mean, I've had the worst that could happen, which is, I guess, causing some sort of divorce in Guernsey. But I just feel like, what's the worst that could happen? The worst, I guess, maybe I could get punched or beaten up. I don't know, but I'm not going to get shot. No. So I think it's all fine. And then there is sometimes you sort of have a gig that maybe, the audience look a bit scary. You just think, why don't I just run away? But then always after you finish the gig, it's the best feeling. Even if it
I can imagine. Yeah, it must be.
Like Guernsey, you just and you feel proud of yourself that you've done it, because there's so many times in life you sort of want to just run away from an awkward situation, or you just don't want, and then you just doing it feels so much better. No matter what, it just so.
It's another, for me though, it's another of your qualities on stage, because you're so confident. You come across nice. And you give this, you walk on and you go, right, this is my space. I'm going to entertain you if it the last thing I do, you know.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
You always do. You always.
Oh, that's
do.
so lovely.
Yeah. Well, it's true for me anyway. How do you remember all your routines? Do you have a way of remembering them? Is there a way of remembering them?
Yeah, some people talk about having like, I think like a memory palace.
Right.
So they sort of have a thing where they'll visualize, for example, getting in the front door, and in the front door when they go in, their cat's there, so then they talk about their cat, and then their cat runs up the stairs, and then they talk about upstairs is maybe the bathroom, they're going to talk about having a shower, and then they remember things, and there's a link to everything.
Yeah.
And I do think that anyway, I sort of I guess if you're writing a set, you want it to link in some way anyway. Yeah. So automatically you should have it that it sort of makes sense. And it should link to the next bit. So naturally, I think if it's stuff that I want to be talking about, or I want to drop in, it should be near a thing that connects it anyway. Right. So as long as I basically remember the first thing I'm going to say, then the rest of it, which should just flow.
Once you remember it, you've got it, yeah.
The picture in it helps. Yeah. So if I am talking about being at home, picturing being at home just means that it comes anyway.
Yeah.
But it's never been a problem for me. I'm quite good at, I remember like, even if I like go to my friend's house and they read out their Wi-Fi password, I'll just remember the Wi-Fi password. I'll just remember things and dates, and I can remember stuff really well. So it never really sort of been an issue.
That's really a photographic memory then.
Yeah, I guess so. It's something like that. Yeah, but it's often with dates and numbers and stuff. I can just recall them, or sometimes it's quite good actually. It's been quite good for, I guess, like networking. Like, yeah, I could meet a comedian and talk to them, or talk to a producer, and then the next time I meet them, I remember the football team they support. I remember the fact that they like to like play golf or something, and then I just sort of so it's quite nice. It's just quite helpful.
Yeah. That is great. Let's move on to Edinburgh. I go up to the Edinburgh Fringe. I've been lucky to go since 2005. It's my holiday, really, and I go up for a week, and I see about 50 shows, and I need a holiday by the time I come back because I love it so
I bet.
much. What was your first Edinburgh Fringe like? What year was it? What did you feel? What show were you in? What was the experience like?
So my first one wasn't great. I only went up for 3 or 4 days for the So You Think You're Funny semi-final.
Right.
And I didn't understand when I started comedy. I had no idea what the festival was. I'd sort of heard about it, but it was something that posh people did, and and like Oxford students went to. So I just had no idea. It wasn't. Yeah. It just wasn't what people from Slough went to. So I just sort of. I just had no idea. So
not Carlisle.
Yeah. So I just sort of walked around. It was raining, and I couldn't understand I didn't understand. So now I understand when people who aren't in comedy ask me about it, that it's mental when you imagine that there's thousands of shows a day. I think there's over 200 every hour happening at once.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
And I was like, how is there people for this? I didn't understand how it was so big. So I think my first one was overwhelming and confusing. But
We've
so now I know. Yeah. If anyone had seen me walking around, they'd have gone, that boy looks overwhelmed and confused. That was just my face constantly for the 4 days.
Yeah.
But I enjoy doing my own show up there. There's a lot of pressure on the whole newcomer thing, which again, I don't like, because it's unnecessary pressure when people are just sort of finding their feet.
Right.
I just think it's a bit unfair, but I always looked at people who went up every year and just got better and a bit better and a bit better and a bit better. And like Catherine Ryan, for example, she went up there. She didn't take off for the first couple of years. Pasco the same. A lot of people really sort of had to work for it. And actually they're the people I'd sort of preferred the sound of their journey, because they just got to get a bit better under the radar.
Yeah.
So I was really excited to go up there last year to do my 3rd hour, but that'll have to wait. But I'm excited. I'm really excited to go back. More excited, I think, than I've been for the others.
Right.
I feel like I get it a bit more now.
Well, I've seen. I first saw you do Little Lost Lad in 2018, which was superb, and I recommended to my friends who thought you were fantastic. There you go. Yes. And I also saw you do Never Make the Same Mistake Twice, spelt wrong, in 2019. That's the pun. There you are, you see?
There it is.
And they were both superb hour-long shows. They really were. They were well-structured, well-delivered.
Oh, thank you.
Do you remember my friend Maria got up from her seat? She was sitting next to me and she got up from her seat and sat at the back. And you went, "Oh, my friend Richard, what have you done to your friend?" And she went very red. And again, it was all audience. You won't remember it, but it was all audience interaction.
Oh, I remember, yeah. I remember thinking, what must you have done? What could you have possibly said? So your own friend walked to the back of the room.
Maria, I've known 20 odd years. I worked with her twice, and she's the best companion to go along to things like this because she loves the comedy as well. So it was probably a laugh. I was laughing too loud at you, and she wanted to hear you. That was probably what it was.
Yes, I think I actually recall that's what she said. And then I was like, and then I remember saying, "Well, I'm sorry, but I cannot tell an audience member off for laughing too loudly. I really need it, so you're gonna have to live with it."
Believe me, I've been in many an audience that have actually left because I've been too loud, and that really annoyed me because you're there to enjoy yourself, like I say. Anyway, let's move on.
That was the second show, wasn't it? That was Never Make the Same Mistake Twice. Yeah, I remember that.
I've also seen you host many a comedy night, particularly at Always Be Comedy. Do you prefer comparing to performing a routine?
No. That's the short answer.
Right, why?
There's many reasons. One is it's very hard to sort of... the night really does rely on you.
Yeah.
If the audience are misbehaving, if the audience are amazing, that's on you. If they're not, that's on you. But I just like to, once I'm done, I've left the stage, I don't want to have to go back on. So I just don't really enjoy. No. I like to sort of, because you build up momentum for someone else to then come and make them laugh, and then you've got to do it again, and you're just doing all this work. And then often, sometimes audience members come up to you afterwards and go, "Oh, you were really good at that. You should give it a go as well." And they can't understand that I'm also a comedian for some reason. Although, on the flip side, the good thing about that is, and you don't have to worry about this at Always Be Comedy because they're such a lovely audience, but it's good for people to know that comparing is the hardest job. However, if you remember before you go onto stage at other gigs that the audience don't understand that you are a comedian, there is no pressure on you whatsoever. If you talk to them, make them feel welcome, and if you can make them laugh, it's a bonus, but they don't expect it and they don't know. So actually, you should technically, if they all think like that, which the majority of them seem to, you've got a very easy gig where you don't have to make them laugh. So that's the good side, but ultimately it's nice just to do your 20 minutes and then leave.
Yeah. Really good answer again. What is your ambition as a comedian? Do you have an ambition? Would you like a TV show? Would you like to present? Would you or are you...
No. Well, yeah, that would be nice, and you get nice sort of bonuses in this job, I think, where you get job offers that maybe you wouldn't get anywhere else. But for me, it's having my own audience. I think if you can tour to your own audience and not sort of struggling for numbers, but I think if we're talking about dream, nothing massive. A lot of arenas are incredible, but I wouldn't want to play them because it's just so big, and I like it to be a bit more connected. So I always thought the biggest I'll go, well, it's not up to me, but I'd like to think that the biggest I'll ever go is about 3,000. But if it was just 500. In between there and 1,000, if you could just easily perform that every night to like a really sort of core audience, that would be brilliant. And then on a bigger scale, it would be America. I really it came to them late, actually. A lot of people sort of have big American comedians they're fans of, and I never was. And I've gotten into it as I've started doing comedy more and appreciating it a lot more. And then, so the Room, I'd love to be able to sell out the Apollo in London. That would be an amazing one. I'd love to be able to do. And then there's Radio City Hall in New York.
I've been there.
Oh,
amazing.
Who did you see there? Or did you do the tour?
We didn't see anybody. We were staying next door to it in the hotel, and we couldn't get in. I think who was on when we were there? It was somebody like, well, it was, of course, it was somebody like Bon Jovi, if I remember.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought I'm going to sing, but they you couldn't get in. Yeah, it was such an impressive building. But,
it's incredible. And John Mulaney's got an amazing special that he filmed there. Right. And I've always thought I wanted to. So maybe about just over a year ago, I thought, that's it. That's the room I really want to play. That would be incredible. And then I was in the Isle of Man with Michael.
Yes.
And he'd just been to America, and he had just done Radio City Hall. I think he did 2 nights there maybe, but he and then he said to me, we were backstage in the Isle of Man, and he was almost apologizing for sort of taking me away from home to be there. And I was like, no, it's great. And he said, sorry, America didn't work out. He said, we just didn't have enough time to get the visa, but we will have more exciting gigs. And I didn't realize that had I been lucky, that I could have gone and supported him out there, and I could have played this room that I'd always dreamed of. So
amazing.
Yeah, so I was close, but it will happen. It will happen.
I'm sure it will. Of course it will. It will, mate. It will. Keep believing. It will.
Thanks.
We are all living in strange times. It's horrible. Yeah, it's really awful. How have you done any online gigs? How have you found online gigs as opposed to live gigs?
I think they might have actually helped with my delivery, because you have to be a lot more sort of conversational. You can't just sort of perform, and at some point during them, people realise that you can just sit down and do them rather than sort of standing up and trying to have the energy that people at home don't have. So I actually quite like that. I think you can make it a bit more. It's very intimate as well. I mean, they're literally you're showing people your house, so you have to be a bit more open, I think. So I think I've actually preferred them, and I've actually got one tonight. I'm doing Catherine Bohart's tonight.
Oh, brilliant!
So I've got that after this. But I enjoy it. I think they're good fun, and the audiences are lovely because, of course, they're going to be, because they've decided to go to a Zoom gig. So it means that they must really love comedy. Yeah. So they're always going to be a good audience. So I like them. I can get used to it.
With me, it's saved my lockdown because I'm so passionate about it. I don't know what I'd do without it. It's you can't beat a live gig, but this is as good as it gets. You know, when it first started off, there was a lot of gigs I went to where there was no audio, so I was just sitting here laughing to 4 walls, and I thought I was going to get taken away. The neighbours were knocking on the windows, not the rest of it. But then when the audio opened up, it was wonderful. You know, it's really lovely. And it was so it was James Gill, who runs Always Be Comedy, and my agent Flo, and them two were talking about how they could make it work. And Flo said, "Why don't you select some and have them unmuted?" Yeah. And the two of them basically saved the lockdown for comedy fans. It's amazing. The Chortle Awards are just up right now as we're recording this, and I'm hoping to God they get the Legends of Lockdown award.
Yeah, they should. They deserve it.
It's so deserved. It really is. You know, it really does.
And helped so many comedians
very, very much, including yourself. It's been brilliant seeing you there.
Yeah. Really good. Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah.
And then I've been writing on Ranganation, and Ramesh has been using it to test out material for that as well. So it's incredible.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Yeah. Like me, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
No.
I've asked that to every comedian and they've all said no.
No.
I might remove it from the list.
But you'll find somebody, and I do think I think I'm somebody who, when hopefully I get to the position where, you know, I don't have to sort of rely on doing the festival every year, that I would like to go back and see people and support them. But when I'm up there, even when I'm up there, you just want to think about your own show, and you just want to. And there has been some times I've wanted to go to Soho. I've taken myself along to sort of Soho Theatre and watch some of those shows, just support your friends.
Yeah.
But and because you do, from watching other people, you will learn, you will get better.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if we've got a night off, you just want to be away from comedy.
Even I can't do it every night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you need a break.
So, as an extension of that, if you're on a comedy bill, do you, and you're first on, do you wait and watch all the other acts on, or do you move on, or does it depend on what your evening involves?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually, funnily enough, I was talking to Sarah Keyworth on my podcast just the other day, and we were both saying how when this is all over, we're sticking around so much more, we're going to be so much more social. And then I said, cut to a month later, we'll all be shooting off to get home again. But if you're away with people, it's really lovely to do. But often in London, people are doubling up, or they just have other things, or, you know, the fact that you're in London means that maybe you can go to a friend's birthday that otherwise, had you not been in London, you wouldn't be able to go to. So you're sort of like taking that sort of the advantage of being near home. But if it's friends on, and if you get a good bill, always be comedy. I think I almost always stay. If good people are on, but often, because I think a lot of comedians, they're not quite themselves when they're at a gig, because they're in a heightened state. They're even anxious, or or it's all about them because they're thinking about their material, or they've been on and it's still about them because they want you to sort of praise them. It's often, unless it's sort of a good friend and a comedian, it's actually quite difficult, because people are often sort of in a weird state. And also, again, because you're in London, it could mean that I'm on at Top Secret at 8 o'clock and I can be home by 9. And that never happens on a Friday, for example. So I might want to go and see friends. So hopefully it happens a bit more after all this, but ultimately that's why I think we all go a little bit mad and drink and stay out so late at the festival, because it's our month to sort of do that, sort of not have to drive anywhere, and we can just sort of be with our friends for the month, and we make up for it then, I'd say. More than make up for it. Fantastic.
Who are your favourite comedians, past and present?
It's tough, because I think that's changed as I've been going. That's changed. Sorry, my hair's an absolute mess. I think it's changed. So when I first started, it was Lee Mack, Sean Locke. I'd say Harry Hill. It was sort of that sort of style, because Harry Hill was the first comedian I ever even saw, even on TV.
Wow.
And I still love them. I've managed to. I've opened for Sean Locke, which has been incredible. And I've never met Lee or Harry Hill, but they're still up there. But now it's a lot more Americans that have sort of influenced me. So it'll be like John Mulaney, and Bill Burr. Really like Anthony Jeselnik. He's very dark, but I just really sort of admire what he does. So there's a lot more Americans have come in, but also Lee Mack, Harry Hill, Sean Locke will sort of stay as they'll always be there as well. But it's definitely at the minute a lot more sort of American based. Maybe because they're sort of.
I was very lucky. I saw Bill Hicks live in Manchester.
Oh wow!
He was incredible and very dark.
I bet.
So direct with an audience, you couldn't help but listen to what he was saying, and he was hilarious with his delivery. I've met Harry Hill on a number of occasions, and the first time I met him, I said to him, I first saw you 30 years ago downstairs in the King's Head, and to this day you've got the best opening line I've ever heard to a gig, which was, he brushed past me, jumped up on stage and said, "I'm really sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm late for the show. I had to have a testicle brought down." And everybody started laughing, and then he said, "From Derby." And he looked at me and he grinned and he said, "I still use that now."
Amazing. That's amazing.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, I'd love to meet him.
The reason why I asked the question is that there's a section in my blog called The Ones That Got Away, and I've written 25 of them who have either passed on or I haven't been able to see. Because every one of them holds so many memories for me. That's why the blogs come along. But there's people in there like Morecambe and Wise, Bob Monkhouse, Dave Allen, and I just think these comedians that I grew up with, you can see now traces in just about every one of them that you can see now. It's extraordinary. It really is. And please keep doing what you do.
Thank you.
Just before we go,
I live in.
Is there anything else you would like to say? Where can you be found on social media? Are you doing any online gigs, which you've mentioned before? You got your podcast. Please feel free to tell the world everything.
Oh my confession. So I have I'm on Little Lost Lad on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah,
it's there. That's me for the socials.
Yes.
And then then my podcast, which I've started, is called Guest List with Jake Lambert, where I invite comedians on, and then they have to pick their perfect dinner party guests, but they can only pick 3, and it has to be one that's alive, one that's dead, and one that's fictional, which is tough. I think
I could give you mine.
Everyone wants. Have you got yours?
Mine would be Eric Morecambe, Inspector Morse, and Paul Merton. I don't know the third one. That's another comedian.
It's a good chat. That's what we were all hoping for.
But certainly,
that's
Eric
lovely.
And Morse is my favourite detective.
Yeah, lovely.
I was almost in an episode of Inspector Morse, but the producer genuinely thought I was going to play a corpse, and he said, and I said, "I'd love to be in it." He said, "But no," he said, "You're too loud." Please,
especially for a corpse. Yeah.
Anyway, please, are you doing any more writing? I did interrupt there. Are you doing any writing?
Oh no, I'm writing on a few shows, writing a book, writing my next Edinburgh show for 2025 or whenever that will be.
It will be. Yeah.
I've got it.
So
I'm working on it every day just in case.
You're writing a book. Wow.
Yeah, a fiction.
Good man.
Something to do, innit?
Good lad.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I thought, why not?
I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. I could talk to you all night. You're such a funny man.
Yeah, this is so lovely. Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure to be here.
And I wish you every success in whatever you do. I really do. And please, I want to see you again live very soon or online. Thank you so much for your time.
I hope so.
All the best to you.